creating shared values for sustainable social development, concentrating on the younger generation, on education and propagation of Buddhism within Thailand and globally. 3. Projects should incorporate technology and multidisciplinary approaches, ensuring relevance in the digital era and international applicability. This afternoon's event is being held as a wisdom-sharing event to honor and commemorate the work and achievements of His Holiness สมเด็จพระอรยวงศาคตญาณ the Supreme Patriarch. It will also be broadcast via MFA Facebook Live around the world. After the event concludes, all distinguished guests are invited to enjoy refreshments outside in the foyer outside this hall. We also invite you to view the exhibition on His Holiness's biography regarding his works and some of His Holiness's significant speeches and messages of international significance. At the conclusion, there will also be a booklet of His Holiness's message and books and publications that you can take back as memoirs of this occasion. A number of books and publications kindly provided by the Mahamokut Ratchavidyalaya Foundation under royal patronage, by Wat Ratchabapit Sathit Mahasimaram, and by พระเดชพระคุณพระอาจารย์ชยสาโร will also be available to collect at the conclusion of this afternoon's event. And these include the book The Five Precepts and the Five Ennoblers, written by His Royal Highness the late Supreme Patriarch the Prince Wachirayaan Warorot, kindly provided by the Mahamokut Foundation under royal patronage. Books on the biography of the Supreme Patriarch in Thai, English and Chinese, and a visitor's guide to Wat Ratchabapit are also available as kindly provided by the temple. Also, 3 books by the Venerable พระอาจารย์ชยสาโร, namely Without and Within, ทำไม or Why, and From Heart and Hand Volume 3 have also been kindly gifted to us by พระอาจารย์ today. ขออนุญาตเป็นภาษาไทยนะครับ หลังเสร็จสิ้นกิจกรรมในวันนี้ขอเรียนเชิญทุกท่านนะครับรับของที่ระลึกเป็นแผ่นพับอัญเชิญพระคติธรรมของเจ้าพระคุณสมเด็จพระสังฆราชที่ประทานมาเป็นพิเศษเพื่อเอากิจกรรมในวันนี้นะครับหนังสือเบญจศีลเบญจธรรมของสมเด็จพระมหาสมณเจ้ากรมพระยาวชิรยานวโรรสทรงรจนาได้รับการสนับสนุนจากมูลนิธิมหามกุฏราชวิทยาลัยในพระบรมราชูปถัมภ์รับได้ที่จุดรับด้านหน้านะครับรวมถึงมีหนังสือพระประวัติเจ้าพระคุณสมเด็จพระสังฆราชเป็น3ภาษาหนังสือนำชมวัดราชบพิตรสถิตมหาศรีมารามและหนังสือของพระเดชพระคุณพระธรรมชยานมุนีพระอาจารย์ชยสาโรที่สามารถรับได้ด้านหน้าเช่นกันนะครับและขอเรียนเชิญชมหนังสืออื่นๆของมูลที่มหามกุฏราชวิทยาลัยได้ด้วยนะครับ Also, the Office of the Permanent Secretary, Office of the Prime Minister, is selling the commemorative pin for the occasion of the Supreme Patriarch's 96th birthday anniversary, which is also available outside. ขออนุญาตประชาสัมพันธ์ว่าในวันนี้สำนักงานปลัดสำนักนายกรัฐมนตรีได้มาจัดจำหน่ายเข็มที่ระลึกงานฉลองพระชนมายุ8รอบสมเด็จพระอรยวงศาคตญาณสมเด็จพระสังฆราชสกลมหาสังฆปรินายกที่ด้านหน้าสำหรับผู้ที่สนใจนะครับ So distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a reminder to all present that photographs may be taken up to the time that Venerable พระอาจารย์ชยสาโร has concluded the reading of the special message from the Supreme Patriarch.And we request that you refrain from photography of all kinds for the duration of the main part of the special talk. And please switch off or turn off the sounds of your mobile phones and devices throughout the event. ขอเรียนท่านผู้มีเกียรติทุกท่านนะครับท่านสามารถถ่ายภาพได้จนถึงเวลาที่พระเดชพระคุณพระธรรมชยานมุนีอ่านพระคติธรรมของเจ้าพระคุณสมเด็จพระสังฆราชจบแล้วหลังจากนั้นเมื่อเข้าสู่การบรรยายพิเศษแล้วขอความกรุณาทุกท่านงดการถ่ายภาพในทุกกรณีตลอดการบรรยายพิเศษและขอความร่วมมือปิดสัญญาณหรือปิดเสียงโทรศัพท์มือถือและเครื่องมือสื่อสารของท่านด้วยขอบพระคุณครับกราบนมัสการ Venerable พระธรรมพัชรยานมุนีนมัสการ Venerable members of the Sangha Your Excellency Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs Your Excellencies Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to the special talk in commemoration of His Holiness สมเด็จพระอรยวงศาคตญาณ the Supreme Patriarch of Thailand's 96th birthday anniversary here at วิเทศสโมสร Ministry of Foreign Affairs. My name is Warapong Watanasin from the Department of Information, your MC this afternoon. We also extend a very warm welcome to those joining us via MFA Thailand Facebook Live from around the world. This event is being held as part of the Royal Thai government's commemorative projects and activities towards this most auspicious occasion. You will find information on His Holiness's biography and his works, and some of His Holiness's significant speeches and messages of international significance displayed in our exhibition outside this hall. Once again, please kindly be reminded to switch off or turn the sounds off your mobile phones and devices, and to refrain from all photography during the main part of the special talk. And now, I am pleased to invite His Excellency Mr. Don Paramat Vinay, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, to deliver his welcome remarks. Your Excellency, please.
Venerable พระธรรมพชรญาณมุนี members of the Sangha, Excellencies, distinguished guests, it's my distinct privilege to extend to you to the special commemorative Dhamma talk today to celebrate the 96th birthday anniversary of His Holy Highness สมเด็จพระอริยวงศาคตญาณ the Supreme Patriarch of Thailand. There is unanimity among all the sages that life is measured by its quality, not quantity, not by its years, but by its depth and purity, the fortitude of its spirit and the refinement of its soul. Indeed, the life of His Holy Highness Supreme Patriarch is the life of unrivaled quality. His magnanimous, selfless compassion is extraordinarily large, transcendental, and dignified. His words and His deeds are inspiring, yet never imposing. His life epitomizes, in the truest and purest sense, the Buddha's teaching of moderation of all things. And in the world where everything extreme is the ultimate alluring attribute, moderation is more needed now than ever to protect the sanctity of human life and to preserve the human race. Today, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is in profound gratitude to Venerable พระธรรมพชรญาณมุนี or พระอาจารย์ชยสาโร for accepting the invitation to deliver a special Dhamma talk to commemorate this auspicious occasion. It's the proper way to honor the life and time of our Supreme Patriarch and the cerebral truth that he has devoted to in his entire life to uphold. If the next half or 45 minutes is a journey into the light and that transcends some of our trepidation and apprehension, it shall be a very highly gratifying 45 minutes. กราบเรียนนมัสการ Thank you.
Now, may I most respectfully invite the Venerable พระธรรมพชรญาณมุนี onto the stage, first for a reading of His Holiness the Supreme Patriarch's message for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, reflecting on time and peace, graciously given especially for today's event, and will be available as a booklet that will be distributed to you at the end of the event. Afterwards, we respectfully invite Venerable พระอาจารย์ to deliver his special talk in commemoration of His Holiness สมเด็จพระอรยวงศาคตญาณ the Supreme Patriarch of Thailand's 96th birthday anniversary. Sir, please.
The Supreme Patriarch's message for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, reflecting on time and peace. With humility and gratitude, I acknowledge the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Buddhist communities, as well as members of the diplomatic corps in Thailand, for their considerate gesture and the well-intentioned endeavor to commemorate my 96th year. As a disciple of the Lord Buddha, I contemplate the passage of time and the process of aging through the enlightened wisdom he has imparted to us. A particular passage from our sacred Pali canon, the Dhammapada, reverberates in my mind. Jara jarita honti, hatha pada anasawa, yasa so vihatatamo, katang tamang charisati. This poignant passage translates as, they become worn with age, their hands and feet unattended to. With their vigor diminished, how will they uphold the Dhamma? It serves as a reflection on the inevitable march of aging and the inherent challenges it presents. It underscores the necessity of perseverance in maintaining our spiritual tenacity to persistently fulfill our duties to the utmost of our abilities. Revisiting my tenure as a Dhammadutta monk, I am reminded of the fundamental essence of Buddhism, metta, embodying universal love and kindness. This spirit subtly mirrors the collective global aspirations to foster peace, understanding, and harmony amidst the beautiful mosaic of diversity. Buddhist teachings emphasizing life's interconnectedness, empathy, and peace should guide our interactions, reminding us of our shared humanity. As we age, akin to ancient trees shedding leaves yet providing solace, our bodies may wane, but our mission endures. Our dedication to cultivating wisdom and compassion is unwavering, resilient like the roots of ancient trees, surviving beyond physical transience. Let us collectively strive for enduring peace and understanding. In homage to the Holy Triple Gem, may you flourish with longevity, grace, happiness, and strength, and may your virtuous aspirations manifest swiftly to fulfill your heart's desires in every possible way. สมเด็จพระอริยวงศาคตญาณ the Supreme Patriarch of Thailand, Wat Rajabopit, Sati Maha Simaram, June the 15th, 2023. I didn't realize I was supposed to read that out, so apologies for any hesitations. So I have a short time here this afternoon, and I'm very well aware that many of you are not from Buddhist backgrounds, and your understanding, indeed interest in Buddhism probably varies very widely. So it's quite a challenge to know quite what to talk about today. But I think I'd like to begin just talking about what it means to be a monk, because we are celebrating the life of one of the greatest monks of our era in Thailand, and a wonderful, not only a wonderful monk, but a wonderful human being. And I think it may be puzzling to many why someone would consider living their life in this form for 70 or 80 years, and what is the draw towards this kind of life? What are the advantages, disadvantages, the pros and the cons? What is it, in fact, what does it consist of? Well, I'll begin with something that you may have noticed just now, that one of the gentlemen here came and gave me a cup of tea and a glass of water. And he didn't just put it down on the surface here, he gave it into my hand. And this is, in fact, one of the most important rules in the monastic discipline. That is that a monk cannot touch any edible substance that has not been specifically offered into his hands. So even if I was to see an apple on the ground, obviously without an owner, just fallen from a tree, I couldn't pick it up and eat it. Now, why would the Buddha make such a rule? Well, the Buddha didn't want Buddhist monks to be hermits. He didn't want us to go off into caves for months at a time. He didn't want us to grow our own food. So there are prohibitions about growing our own food also. We're not even allowed to store food overnight. So I couldn't just take a sack of food that somebody had given into my hands and disappear onto a mountaintop for a few weeks at a time. This rule ensures that the Buddhist monk has a daily contact with the lay community. It's a way of creating a specific kind of relationship between the ordained, the monastic Buddhists and the lay Buddhists. And the Buddha left his teaching in the hands of the Buddhist community. We call this the fourfold Buddhist community of male and female monastics and male and female lay Buddhists. The Buddha refused to appoint a successor or someone who would lead the Sangha or lead the religion in his place after he passed away. He said it's the teachings that are your leader. And because of this emphasis on the teachings, then the scholarship and the academic strength of Buddhist monasticism has been a very vital and visible feature of Buddhism through the ages. And the first great universities that we're aware of in Nalanda and Taxila, for instance, in India, were Buddhist monastic universities. So the Buddha wanted his teachings to be our teacher, and he entrusted the religion to both the monastics and the lay Buddhists. And in that division, there are two different kind of dynamics. In one dynamic, the idea is that the monastics model the virtues that the Buddha taught to be an example and inspiration to the lay Buddhists. And a second dynamic is a division of responsibilities. So the idea of the monastic order is that it's removed from the world of power and influence and striving and struggling and all of the craziness of the world, not completely removed, but far enough removed to be able to be a mentor and to provide a Buddhist, clear-sighted perspective on the pressures and the struggles of the lay Buddhists. And it's very important for this reason that the Sangha is always politically neutral. It takes no sides in any short-term political struggles or issues. It gives no support to any particular form of government or any particular political party. And the idea, and this is something that the Thai Sangha has been able to maintain quite admirably over many hundred years, is a neutrality in which people can put their political affiliations or their social status, park them or leave them at the gate and come into the monastery. At least this is the ideal, and just be lay Buddhists together. And that kind of binding, unifying role in Thailand has been performed, I think, very well during the past centuries, and is an important condition for the relative peace in Thai society over the centuries. Now, one or two things that you may or may not know about the Buddhist monastic order. In Thailand, there are probably around, I think, 300,000 monastics, and that might sound like a lot, but the figure is more or less the same it was when I joined the order 45 years ago, and at the same time the population of Thailand has doubled. So the ratio of monks to lay Buddhists is steadily falling. The other key feature, and this is not true so much of the Buddhist monastic orders in other Theravada countries such as Sri Lanka, Burma, Myanmar, for instance, is that temporary ordination is the norm rather than the exception. So I don't have any figures here, but I would estimate that probably of those 300,000, less than 10% would be monks all their lives. So someone who's been in the order, like myself, as they say, for 45 years is the exception. And this is something that I found very attractive, and it was reassuring for my parents also, that it's very easy to leave the monastic order. It's a lot easier to leave than it is to join, at least in the tradition in which I was brought up and which I'm affiliated with. So, in fact, no ceremony is needed at all. All that would be needed for me is to say to any one of you or all of you, that's it, I've had enough, I don't want to be a monk anymore. And I wouldn't be. That would be it. That would be the end of my monastic life. If I meant it and you understood it, that's enough. Of course, in practice, there are ceremonies and things are done generally in a more beautiful and dignified way, but it's not compulsory. So, I, at the age of 20, I joined the monastic order. I came to Thailand in the late 1978, and I've been here ever since. And I came here specifically in order to become a monk. After leaving school, after high school at the age of 17, and traveling, mostly hitchhiking and living rough and traveling around through Asia. I spent a year in India as a teenager and 4 or 5 months working in Iran, in Tehran and Pakistan, and so many adventures before I reached the age of 20. Returning to England, I realized that there was nothing I wanted to do rather than study and practice the Buddhist teachings, but was at somewhat of a loss as how to do that practically. And then I attended a meditation course taught by a lay English Buddhist teacher who had been a monk in Thailand for 6 years. And in his discourses, he would often tell stories, anecdotes about his life as a monk. And I thought, wow, so this is an institution specifically designed by a fully enlightened Buddha for people just like me. So no question, that's it. That's what I wanted to do, and never wavered in that ever since. But one of the reasons, or a couple of reasons, why I was particularly inspired with this school of Buddhism and Thai Buddhism, Thai Buddhist tradition, again are features of the monastic order and discipline. Firstly, there are a great many rules that monks learn to keep, but there are no exceptions at all for people who've been a monk for a long time, the most senior monks, even for monks who are considered to be fully enlightened. They have to keep all of the same rules as someone who's been a monk just for one day. So given that the monastic order is a hierarchical structure, and we know in any hierarchical structure, then the kind of corruption and problems that arise are people at the top of the hierarchy tend to take advantage of the people lower down. And it seemed to me here was a hierarchy with a number of very important or unique checks and balances. The first check and balance is that everybody is a monk through their own volition. You join because you want to join. And secondly, if there's anything that you don't like, or you become a monk and you realize, I've made a huge mistake. And a lot of people do feel that, maybe not after the first day, but after a month or a year or 5 years, and they can just leave. So that freedom to join the monastic order or to leave the monastic order seemed to me a guarantee of its integrity and safety as an institution in which I could commit my life. And secondly, as I say, the fact that the most senior monks, even if they are considered enlightened beings, keep the same rules as everyone else, it's not going to completely eliminate corruption and people abusing power, but it severely restricts it. And the third check and balance is something called pawarana. And that is the custom or the requirement that every monk in a monastic community announces publicly that he is open to admonishment from all members of Sangha, not only his teachers or his peers, but even juniors, if they should see or suspect even of them behaving in an improper way. So this is a very sophisticated and thorough feedback system which is right at the heart of monastic life. So that's the ideal. I would say in the monasteries in which I've lived in Thailand over these past many years, my own personal experience is that the adherence to the rules and the respect that people with power have for people without that kind of power is generally on a very high standard. I would say a weakness in Thai Buddhist monastic order is that the feedback system is not strong. And so there are, although you may think of the monastic order as a kind of a hermetic community completely separate from the world, because most of the monks are people there on temporary basis and coming and going, it naturally absorbs a lot of the values and the prejudices of people who are not fully committed to this training. And as you know, in Thailand, giving feedback and being frank and open is quite difficult for most people. And so that particular aspect is something that I think needs to be strengthened to help to face the challenges that the monastic order is facing at this moment. And the monastic order faces many challenges. One, as I said, that the ratio of monastics to lay people is declining, and so there are many empty monasteries all around the country, particularly up country. There is a rapidly declining birth rate. So in the old days, if parents had a few boys, one boy can go in the monastery. You've still got their brothers to help look after the farm and so on. And now you've got one son. That's a whole different story. So there are various pressures on just maintaining the numbers of the Sangha. There are also cultural reasons and technological reasons. There's a growing secularization of Thai society, and one of the big headaches for abbots of monasteries in Thailand these days are mobile phones. The monasteries that I've trained in or that I've led have quite strict rules for use of mobile phones, particularly amongst young monks in training. But many monasteries find that standard impossible to keep, because for many young men these days, mobile phones are a deal breaker. If I can't have my mobile phone, I just won't be a monk. It's as simple as that. So this is one of the dilemmas. Monks say to me, I said, why do you let young monks use phones? Because they're little computers, and the whole idea of monastic life is you renounce distraction. You're wanting to learn about yourself and your experience and understand life, and that's a distraction, and it's such a potent distraction. I say, yeah, we know, but what can we do? So that's one of the problems that my institution has. So I joined it. I'm so grateful for the life that I've been able to lead in Thailand, and I came, as I say, as 20 years old, and right from the beginning I had no doubts at all. This is how I want to spend my life, and because it's so easy to leave, and because what you think and what you want from your life at 20 is rarely what you're going to think and want when you're 25 or you're 30 or you're 35. Very few monks have that kind of certainty. So I've been blessed with that. And some monks just think about leaving every day, and some monks are like super confident. They're going to be monks for the rest of their life, and then suddenly one day I've had enough and walk out. And others don't know how they're going to make it to the end of the month and end up spending 50 years as monks. So it's a very unsure kind of thing. Going back to the senior monks keeping all the same rules, this is so inspiring, and it's so important for a number of reasons. And it's a tradition that goes back right to the time of the Buddha himself, when one of his chief disciples, Venerable Mahakassapa, who was foremost renowned for his ascetic lifestyle, he was tough, really tough. And so much so that in his, I don't know, maybe his 60s or 70s, then the Buddha himself said to him, you can just relax a little bit. You're fully enlightened. You don't need to do all this stuff anymore anyway. Just take it a little bit easy. So I'm paraphrasing. This is not the actual what it says in the books. But Venerable Mahakassapa says, Lord, please give me permission to carry on. I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing it for future generations. So this is a key principle of this monastic order, that even if you feel some things, it wouldn't make a big difference whether you do them or you don't do them. And if you, it's not such, you think it's not such a big deal. But when you have the great monks of your tradition who refrained from these things to the very last day of their life, even though they didn't need to at all, then you say, well, who am I to say I don't need to do that anymore? And why that's important is that in all spiritual communities, I think, with any kind of mental culture or mental cultivation, spiritual cultivation, one of the real bugbears and problems, and this is also certainly in Buddhist tradition, is overestimation of one's spiritual faculties. So you have very strong meditation experiences and then draw conclusions from them that you have realized this, you've seen that, and so the experience may be real, but the interpretation of it can often be mistaken. And so if you have a tradition that says, once you've realized this level or that level, you don't have to keep all these rules anymore, then you open a door for someone who overestimates their attainments and starts relaxing their conduct and then realize they're not what they thought they were, and then they're in real trouble. So this principle, I think, is a very sound one. Now, I've talked a little bit about enlightened teachers and so on, and just like to also talk about a specific feature of this school of Buddhism, we call Theravada Buddhism. So this is what we can call the conservative Buddhist tradition, which spread southwards from northeast India, where the Buddha lived, spread down to Sri Lanka, and from Sri Lanka spread to Southeast Asia, Thailand, Laos, Khmer, Cambodia, Burma, South Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia. No, that's more the Mahayana, excuse me. So here the idea of the teacher, the spiritual leader or teacher, is not like a living God or not a guru in the way that we find in the Indian Brahminical or Hindu tradition. But the idea of the teacher in this form of Buddhism is the good friend. Or in the case of a spiritual teacher, he's like the best friend you could ever imagine. So it's quite a different feeling, isn't it? Like a teacher as a guru and a teacher as a friend. And the qualities of the spiritual friend we call the Kalyana Mitta. And we can see these embodied in great monks like the Sankaraja, whose life we're celebrating today, are numbered 7 in number. The first is he inspires affection and love. He or she inspires respect. He or she inspires emulation. So those are 3 key, salient qualities. Is someone who's very patient with their disciples and the faults and vices and views and opinions of their disciples. They are skilled communicators. They know how to explain their truth, the truth that they've realized, in a way which is appropriate to their audience. They are able to articulate profound matters in clear and simple ways. So there's this is a non-Buddhist source. Einstein is saying, express things as simply as possible, but no more simply than that. And that's I think the Buddhist idea. It's very easy to simplify things by just cutting out all the difficult bits, and then you say, "Oh wow, it's always seemed so difficult. Now at last I understand." No, you don't. It's like a dumbed down version. You understand, but the skill of a teacher is someone who is able to articulate something complex without betraying the complexity, but explaining it in a very simple way. And the 7th point is that the good friend, the best friend, the spiritual teacher is someone who never abuses his power over his student or her student, and never takes them on the wrong path. So those are the ideas of the teacher, and although I've met and had the good fortune to be able to receive teachings from the Supreme Patriarch, my own teacher, Ajahn Chah, lived in the forest all his life. So if you see a Buddhist monk with this color robe, then this is the sign of a forest monk. So you may not be aware there are two let's say kinds of monks, although they're not like completely separate. The monks who live in monasteries, in the villages, in the towns, in the cities, their life is largely devoted to study and sometimes some teaching of lay people, ceremonies, more priestly functions, and the forest monks lead a more austere life, which is focused on practice of meditation. So to give you an idea of what that means, this is a daily life in a forest monastery in northeast Thailand, where I've lived my life. So the bell rings at 3 a.m. We get up and get to the main hall, Dhamma hall, and 3:30 till 4 a.m. there is a period of chanting. From 4 to 5 a.m. there is a period of meditation. 5 a.m. there's a clean-up, and then the monks are divided into groups, and they walk out from the monastery into the surrounding villages to collect alms, collect their daily meal. So to say it's begging for alms is not really so accurate, in that monks are forbidden to ask for anything from lay people. This is another one of the rules. The only thing that a monk can ask for from a lay person who hasn't specifically already made an invitation to them is water and toothwoods, which probably doesn't come up very much these days, but water we can ask. Other than that, we're not allowed to ask for anything. So when you're walking, it's just walking with your bowl. I'm sure you've seen monks walking. You're allowed to stop sometimes, but you're not allowed to solicit anything. And alms round is more of a ceremony than anything else, and particularly in the villages which surround a forest monastery. First thing someone does in the morning is they cook some sticky rice, and then they go to the front gate, stand at say hello to the next door neighbor, and wait for the monks to come. And the monks come at the same time every day, walking in a silent column. And there's usually, very rarely, any kind of greeting between the monk. It's a ritual, and it's a ritual of giving and sharing and receiving, and it's a very intimate kind of feeling. And first time many people see this or participate have tears in your eyes. It's such a beautiful thing. And often you can get generations. You get the grandmother and the mother and the son and the grandson or granddaughter all standing in a line waiting for the monks to come. And even though you don't speak to these people, as a monk, you feel just so close to them, and they to you. And the Lao or the Isan dialect for lay supporters of a monastery, we say po ork and me ork, and so that means like outside mothers and outside fathers, literally. And most of the villages, really the older ones, look on the monks and nuns as their sons and daughters. They have very strongly identify, this is our monastery, you know. So they come to the monastery regularly. Many people will, having put food in the bowl, will then follow the monks back to the monastery and then do some cooking in the kitchen, in the monastery kitchen, to supplement the monk's daily meal. And then on the one Prat day, which is equivalent to the Sabbath, but it's not a fixed day of the week. It's the monastic calendar is a lunar calendar, and so it's the 8th and 15th day of the moon, so the full moon and the dark moon and the half moons. These are the days when people will go and spend the whole day and night in the monastery. This is the forest monastery, it's not the village monastery, so they'll walk, and usually from the villages to the monastery, it's usually 2, 3, 4, 5 kilometers, something like that. And the elderly people who don't have to work in the fields anymore will come in the morning of the, what they call the Sabbath day, and the abbot will give a discourse, and they'll offer food, and they'll spend the day in the monastery kitchen where there's an area for lay Buddhists to read or do a bit of gardening or meditate a bit. And then in the evening, they come together with the Sangha, and there's evening chanting and meditation, and the abbot gives another talk, which usually goes on quite late into the night. And then the tradition in our monasteries had always been that we spend the whole night meditating. And so it's like a once a week vigil. 4 a.m. is morning chanting, and then 5 a.m. new day starts. Monks go off on alms round, come back, have a meal, and usually just go back to their little huts in the forest and crash out, completely exhausted. Whereas the lay people go off and spend the next day in the fields. So we just have so much respect for our lay supporters, because they're so hardy and tough and devoted. So back to the daily schedule. Lay people will come from the village, sometimes from the local town or city, and offer supplementary food, supplementing the rice that we get on alms round, and we eat just one meal a day at about 8 a.m. Then after the daily meal, there's a clean-up period, and then the monks return to their lodgings, which are little huts. Vary these days from very basic, like little grass roof huts, to something more substantial. But everyone has their own separate little place in the forest, in a little clearing, where they're not able to see the other kutis, the other cottages, and they have free time to meditate or study, or maybe they have some work project that they're craft project that they're working on. They can make their own schedule until 3 a.m. was a work period. There's sweeping and cleaning, and maybe work in the forest. Sometimes there's construction work. And then 4:30 or so we have a cup of tea or fruit juice and a chat. So it's the like time when we all get together in a little more informal way. And then in the evening, meeting of meditation and chanting, and not every day, maybe a reading or a discourse, some encouragement from the abbot, and monks are usually back at their little huts by 9:30, no later than 10, and then 3 a.m. the bell goes for the next day. So that's the kind of life that I've lived. Now I'm living on my own, so a little bit more flexible lifestyle, but that's basically the pattern of the monks in forest monasteries. So I'm almost out of time. I'm going to give you like a Buddhism 101, kind of like Buddhism in a nutshell to end this talk. And then if anybody wants to ask any questions, then please feel free. So in my understanding, we can divide religions of the world into different families. And as the family of religions that's most well known these days, the family of religions that grew up in the Middle East. You have Judaism, Christianity, Islam. These religions are characterized by their emphasis on faith. There are certain dogmas that one has to accept to become a member of those religions. And you basically have a choice, you believe or you don't believe. So that's one kind of religion, or one family of religion. But because of the preeminence and the prestige and the wealth and the power of the Western world over the past 200 years, the basic principles of those religions have led to this idea that there is a thing called religion, and they're almost basically the same kind of thing, and just maybe use different words or have different some differences. But the idea of what a religion is basically agreed upon, although the details of what you believe in is obviously varies from religion to religion. So I would like to call that family of religion, say, belief system religions, okay, as a category. Now, the religions that grew up in India, and here I'm specifically Buddhism, is not a belief system religion. And if you look at it through the eyes, the concepts of belief system religions, there's no way you can really understand it. So I would categorize Buddhism as an education system religion. So it's a very different concept of what a religion is. And so what about faith? Is there is a role for faith, but faith is seen as a tool, and faith is seen more as a double-edged sword, something to be handled with care, something that needs to be understood, to be applied in this education process without ill effects, because without wisdom, faith can very easily slip into superstition or fanaticism, and that's a constant reminder that to be aware that faith gives focus, faith gives energy, but that it needs to be governed by wisdom. So this is one of the Buddhist ideas. It's not a question of the more faith, the better. It has to be balanced. So the faith, what is the faith in Buddhism? So most simply, essentially, it's faith in the innate potential of human beings for enlightenment, for complete freedom from all suffering by realization of true happiness through one's own efforts. So we can look at the Buddhist teachings as hypothesis rather than dogmas. So the Buddhist hypothesis is that internal suffering, not talking about pain and physical discomfort and physical difficulties, the internal pain, suffering is primarily the result of ignorance and a lack of understanding of our human nature and the world we live in. So the fundamental problem for Buddhists is ignorance. And the Buddha says wherever there is ignorance, there is a flowering of negative emotions, greed, hatred, delusion, etc., etc. So this is the human condition. Because human beings don't understand themselves, then all kinds of negative emotions dominate their lives and lead them to create suffering, more suffering for themselves and others. And then the third hypothesis of the Buddha is that it doesn't have to be like that, that human beings have the potential to transcend that and to develop a clear, accurate understanding of themselves, and that with that knowledge or vichara, an understanding of oneself, all of those negative mental states that relied upon or grew from ignorance wither away. But that realization of true happiness, the end of suffering, enlightenment, or whatever you call it, is only possible through a comprehensive and thorough, profound training or education of every aspect of your life, your conduct, your speech, your emotions, your thinking. And this is a holistic education. It's not like a step-by-step approach. And this holistic education system is what is called in the Buddhist text the Eightfold Path. So the Buddhist faith is that I can abandon all kinds of greed, jealousy, hatred, depression, anxiety. All of those things that plague my life are not inherent in the human condition. They are a product of ignorance. And I have within me the capacity to abandon ignorance and find the true understanding of life and realize true happiness. So from this point of view, virtues, it's not like you should be unselfish, you should be kind, you should be patient, you should be this, you should be that, and why aren't you? What Buddha is saying is the more clearly you look within, the more these virtues will appear in your mind. They are the natural consequence of clear understanding. So this education is very much focused on how to create this clear understanding. Well, what is going to be your tool to establish that clear understanding? What's your mind? But is your mind up to the job? And I think, well, not really, is it? So we have to train our mind. So this is the heart of Buddhist training. We're training our conduct, we're training our emotions, but we really need to get to the nitty-gritty, to the heart. So what do? How do you identify the obstacles to clear vision? How do you protect the mind from them arising in the first place? How do you let go of them when they've already arisen? How do you introduce into your mind the virtuous qualities that you're needing to progress on this path? How do you nurture and bring to maturity these wholesome qualities that have already arisen? This is the education we're talking about. So meditation is one part of this. These days there's a lot of different views of what meditation is, and meditation is sort of taken out of its context of this comprehensive education system and is thus misunderstood, or it becomes merely like a stress relief program or whatever. But it lacks its true potency when it's not integrated into this whole approach to life. So what do? You give your mind, in meditation, you give your mind a job. Like it's the most simple kind of job that you can think of. It's like for instance, when you breathe in, know that you breathe in. And when you breathe out, know when you breathe. So you don't have to study a lot. You don't have to go to college. It's like, well, that should be easy enough. But it isn't, is it? If anybody's ever tried it, well, why isn't it? Why can you not know when your breath comes in, you know you're breathing in. When it breathes out, you know it's breathing out. It's incredible just what a mess your mind is. It's like a crazy monkey. So this is the first kind of wisdom when you realize, wow, this is my mind. It's like this. So don't be discouraged or fearful, because it's trainable. So one of the life skills, I think, that's I think most people would accept is something they'd like to develop, is like relaxed effort. So we know how to put a lot of effort into something and get stressed out, and we know just to sort of completely lay back and relax. But finding some kind of blend or balance between the two is very difficult. But meditation helps you to do this, because the mind and body is a very efficient feedback system. So you give it this job I was telling you. When you breathe in, know when you're breathing in. When you breathe out, know you. And what happens? Well, if you try too hard and you're just using willpower, what happens is your breathing becomes abnormal, you develop constriction in your chest, maybe you have a headache, and that doesn't mean you're hopeless. It means too much effort, not enough relaxation. If, on the other hand, you're too relaxed and not enough effort, then you go off into daydreams or you fall asleep. So here your body and mind is telling you too much relaxation, not enough effort. So you learn how to fine-tune this effort and find this balance. And you are just this simple, very basic effort to create a relationship between your mind and your meditation object of such a quality that these agitation and doubts and worries and thoughts and memories don't come in and just wash you away. This is a very important quality that you're developing, ability to be present to your experience. So this is something that some people have as a natural gift, but even if you have it already, it's something really worth cultivating, being present to what's going on right now. Is one of the questions, comes up, I think, so often is, why do really smart people do so many stupid things? Do you ever think about that? A lot of you are very smart people, so maybe you have some experience. But the thing is that we have this idea of there is this thing called smartness. So how could stupidity occur? The thing is that we're not clever or smart all the time, and we're not clever and smart in all areas of our life. We're clever and smart in certain areas of our life, and quite not so clever in other areas of our life. And often we are most clever with regards to things that don't have any personal impact on our lives, other people's problems. But when it comes to our own issues, it's quite a different matter, something that we can see, be so clear-sighted about, oh, that person is like this, but then when it's with us, we have a big blind spot. And so we have like all the information, experience we need to deal with the problem, but when the problem affects us emotionally or personally or our sense of self and dignity, then we forget. And then when the crisis is over, then we remember again. So it's like you've got this incredible, let's say you've got this latest model Mercedes, you can go anywhere you want, and you've got a driver even maybe, but when you need to go anywhere, you can't find the key. So what's the use of the car? What's the use? And it's like this with our intelligence. It's not just a matter of having the news, having the knowledge and the experiences. Can you apply that when you need it? When you're under pressure, where you're being tempted, where you're the pressure on you is to forget. And this is the life skill that you can learn through simple meditation techniques, like when you breathe in, you breathe out. When you breathe out, you breathe out, because you're developing a mindfulness muscle. And so as that muscle becomes stronger, you're able to be there in the present, and despite the pressures and temptations and stresses and strains, and you're able to act and speak in ways which are in harmony with your ideals and your beliefs and your views. And so I think that whatever religion that we profess, or whether you have no religion at all, that kind of life skill is very important. But as I say, these days mindfulness is very popular throughout the world, but it's taken out of the Buddhist context, and there's a danger in that. It becomes distorted and pulled this way and that way for commercial reasons even. But it has to be embedded particularly in an ethical approach to life. So the Buddha didn't lay down rules, or there's no kind of punishment and reward system in Buddhism. Buddhism starts off with the human condition. How are we going to live together, given that we all have these fears and doubts and desires and greeds and anger and all this stuff? How can we live together? What's the bottom line? What do we need? Answer is safety. So how can we live and feel safe? Well, Buddha says you just take advantage of this basic human capacity to refrain from certain things that you really want to do. You can't refrain from having a desire, but you can refrain from acting upon it. So you say to your family or people around you, I still get very angry, I lose my temper, I get aggressive, and I'm working on this, it's a work in progress, but I promise you that no matter how angry I get, I will not abuse you physically or verbally. And the Buddha said this is called the greatest gift you can give to the people around you. It's the gift of safety, and that's how you create trust. And so creating communities of safety and trust are an essential part of providing the foundation in which you can apply the kind of meditation techniques that I've been talking about. So I've exceeded my time, excuse me, but so much to talk about, and I hope that you've found it interesting, and I would like to end my discourse at this point.
Those in the audience who would like to ask questions, please raise your hand, and our staff will come to you with the microphone. Please state your name and affiliation before your question. We may have about 15 minutes or so for this. Thank you very much.
กราบนมัสการ I'm Chakrit Direk Watanachai from TV Channel 3. I have one question that has been asked a while, but I don't know how to answer. I am Buddhism, and I am Buddha Mamaka for the whole of my life, and I have a Buddha image and other holy image in my room, in my turbulent room. And one day, my friend from America is a long old friend, and he know that I am Buddhism, and he is Christian. And one day he came to my house. He saw that room that I have a lot of Buddha image, but also in the meantime I have any other holy image like Naga or Rahu and even Aikai in my room. So he asked me with his curiosity that why I thought that for Buddhism you only honor your Buddha image, but why there are the other things in that room. It's in with me for many years. I never think about this one. I don't know how to answer them. I know it's not right, but sometimes it's wrong, or it may not wrong, but you cannot answer them. So I would like to get your comment if I've been asked again by any other person like that. How should I answer them? Why I am Buddhism, but I honor any other thing else?
Speak around that because it's an interesting point. You know, why do we have Buddha images in the first place? And for those of you who don't know the history, at the time of the Buddha and shortly afterwards, there was a taboo against representing the Buddha pictorially or in sculpture. So if anyone's been to the stupa in Sanchi, it's like the very first generation. It's a very similar idea to we have like in Islam, where you don't represent the figure of the Sasada, of the teacher. But things changed, and the Buddhism spread into Afghanistan and Iran and all those Stan countries. They were Buddhists of one stripe or another for hundreds of years. And the Buddhists in Afghanistan followed a very similar kind of Buddhism to the Buddhism that we follow. And that was the time when what we now call Afghanistan, Pakistan, had become a Greek colony. And the Greeks had imported a number of Apollo statues, and they were paying respects to Apollo. And the Buddhists thought, well, that's really cool, you know, maybe we could adapt that because most people, you know, when you talk about wisdom and compassion and purity and all these things, these are so abstract. You know, if you're meditating and you have like a rich inner life, then you don't need so many external symbols. But without that, for most people, to have some kind of external representation of the values that you uphold and aspire to is very helpful. And so that was how Buddha images began. Buddhists in Afghanistan, Pakistan, copying Apollo images of Greeks. I think that I love Buddha images, and for me, the art of the Buddha image, you have something like stone or wood or metal of some kind. So those materials are hard and solid, and yet they're carved in such a way that you have a sense of grace and gentleness. And when you develop along the Buddhist path, and then you could develop this inner cultivation, then this harmony of solidity and firmness of mind, coupled with a flexibility and a gentleness and a warmth, is something that you see this expressed in the Buddha. And the Buddha's eyes are open, and he has a slight smile on his face usually. So this like the Buddha's eyes are open means he's still, he's expressing stillness, and yet he sees the suffering of the world. And the smile, small smile, this is a smile of compassion. He's not indifferent to it. The Buddha sees the way things are and feels compassion and wants to share that, his teachings, with others. So there are different artistic styles and so on and so forth, but Buddha images are meant to represent spiritual values and to embody them in such a way that can bring up positive emotion, that remind you, yeah, I'm a Buddhist, these are my values, these are my... So when people say, oh, you're just bowing to a piece of rock or a piece of, you know, I would say, well, that's as foolish as saying someone who's reading something or watching something on an iPad is, you're just looking at a load of different colored pixels on a screen. Yeah, I mean, they are pixels, but they're coming together in a way which is meaningful for me. And this is the same idea with the Buddha image. I would say that one of the most beautiful features of Thai culture, specifically indebted to Buddhist values, is its acceptance of diversity. I don't know any country in the world which has a history of tolerance. Thai culture is so tolerant of other religious systems, we don't even have a word for tolerance in Thai language, never needed one, because there's never been any intolerance to overcome. And this is specifically due to the fact that Buddhism is an education system, and it's like how you live your life which is important rather than your beliefs. So for Thai Buddhists, that's a Christian, he's a Muslim, he's this, he's that. No problem at all. You know, what you believe is, but how do they live their life? Are they good people? Are they kind people? Are they honest people? So you're not making that kind of distinction of us and them as Buddhists. You're saying, how do people live their life? Are they good people? So their belief system is not like central to how you perceive other people. And you're not saying, I'm Buddhist, he's this, he's that. And this is so beautiful and so unique in this country that most Thai people don't even sort of think about, well, of course, you know, why would you dislike someone just because they have a different religion? You know, it seems weird. But through most of the world, that's far from the case if you study its history. So Thais we don't have any problem if you have, this is an article of some spiritual significance and beauty and from a different religious tradition, then we can honor that. And I was speaking with a Thai woman who married a German. He just like one of these kind of mail order thing, or sort of just took a risk and answered an advertisement and got married to somebody, and it wasn't quite, you know, the heaven that they imagined. There was a guy who works in a factory and so on a Sunday morning, all he wants to do is lay in bed and, you know, relax. And his Thai wife forced him to get out of bed and go to church because he needs some kind of spirit. She don't want to convert him to Buddhism, but she wants him to be a better Christian than he is. And I think this is a very kind of classic kind of Thai, you know, whatever religion you have, well, yeah, fine, we'll respect that. But, you know, really respect people who try to lead good lives. That's the main thing. So if there are other spiritual symbols and things you find beautiful, but it's your refuge is in Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Those things are not your refuges. They're not what expresses your deepest values and aspirations.
My name is Raviwan Kanchanagunchon. I just like to ask the question. When I was at school, I had to study Vesandon Chadok. I think, if I remember correctly, it's the last reincarnation.
Okay.
Before he became Buddha.
Uh-huh.
And then, you know, in the story, Buddha Vesandon gave away his children to Chujok in order to achieve, to be detached from his children, to show that he has achieved the greatest detachment a human can do. But in so doing, he hurt his children.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is what I cannot understand.
One of the serious wrong turns and mistakes that's been made in teaching Buddhism in schools is to adopt the model from the belief system religions. Those religions are based very much on the life of the founder. So to become a good Muslim, you really have to know the life of the Prophet very well. And if you want to be a Christian, it's basically you study the life of Jesus. And I think in teaching Buddhism, that's just been the assumption. Well, we just teach the life of the Buddha. And too much emphasis has been made on that. And so it's alienated a lot of people rather than drawn them towards Buddhism, which for me is, as I say, this education system for reducing and eliminating human suffering and maximizing human happiness. And I think it's a very efficient and practical approach to life. So that those stories of the previous lives of the Buddha, like in Thailand culturally, given far too much importance. They're just so negligible part of Buddhist tradition. What I would also say is, firstly, that there are huge numbers of teachings in the Tripitaka, the Patraipitok. So traditionally we say there are 84,000 teachings, and there's really more than that. And so if we want to see how important a teaching is, we have to see how many different places does it appear in the teachings? How much is it emphasized? Does it appear in like the core discourses or more minor discourses? Is there a pattern? What is the emphasis? Are there teachings that counter it? So we find that if you study the whole of the Buddhist canon, and it's like 50 or 100 times longer than the Christian Bible, that's the only case in which somebody is praised for giving away their children. There are hundreds and hundreds of teachings about taking care of your loved ones, looking after your parents. Look at the Mangala Sutta, for instance, taking care of your wife and your family. If you want to become a Buddhist monk, these days, if somebody comes to become a Buddhist monk and they're married, they have to have the permission of their wife. Otherwise, because if someone's just going to walk out on their wife and family, they're not going to be a good monk. You don't want somebody like that. So if we believe, if you accept this idea of the Bodhisattva creating parami for millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of lifetimes, not just 1 or 2 or 10, millions, and just one lifetime where where he gave his children away. So you have to see this in the context of the overall teachings on family life and the responsibility of householders to their communities, and the history of the Bodhisattva over millions and millions of lifetimes. And it's such a shame that so much importance given to this Vaisandra story, in my view. And you could also say that it's actually a test to the value and the importance of children in Buddhist view. It's like the Buddha's done all these things over millions and millions of lifetimes to create the parami, and the final, most difficult thing of all, after millions of lifetimes, is giving up his children. So it's like saying, wow, how important are children, if that's the sort of the most difficult thing that the most spiritually accomplished person could accomplish. So that's a different way of looking about it. But I don't know of any Buddhist teacher anywhere who recommends abandoning their children. Quite the opposite. So I think it's what we call in English a bit of a red herring. You know, it's like when you hear it first, it's a bit shocking. And to be fair, people who want to be frank, in the past, Christian missionaries and people have used this kind of story to denigrate Buddhism even. That's not the case these days, but in the past, that was, people of your generation probably experienced that. So, yeah, I don't think it's like a big deal myself. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We may have time for one more question. Any member of the audience?
So I would like to add just something. Again, this is another, I think, key Buddhist teaching. And this is, the Buddha coined a word which is quite a remarkable word. It's called Satyanuraka, caring for the truth. And he says you should care for the truth. So how do you care for the truth? He said, you should recognize, should you not, that it is possible to believe absolutely in something which is not true. You know, you may believe that what you believe is true, but you would accept, I think, that someone who has a different belief to you, even if they are 100% committed to it, they're believing in something that's false. So if we just accept a general principle that it is possible for human beings to have an absolute, unshakable faith in something which is not true, then the next point the Buddha makes is, if that is so, if you accept that premise, therefore belief is not a proof that what you believe is necessarily true. Okay? And so the Buddha makes this distinction between belief and a direct experience of truth. He says these are not the same thing. So a lot of the differences and conflicts between religion, I think, are based upon this misunderstanding. People say, I believe it because it's true. It's true because I believe it, and I believe it because it's true, and it's true because I believe it. And so people with different beliefs just never really come to any kind of agreement. But so the Buddhist point of view is, say, oh, you're a Buddhist, do you believe in rebirth, let's say? Well, I don't actually know. This would be a Buddhist answer. I don't actually know as a direct experience. I can't remember past lives, and I don't have to believe it. That's not part of the deal, being a Buddhist. The deal is you humbly accept, I don't know. Yes, I believe, and I have these reasons, 1, 2, 3, 4, or how many, why I believe, but I concede that it's still only a belief. It's not direct knowledge. So I think this is like a gift that the Buddha gave to the religious world, and to that kind of humility to say that belief is not knowing. Belief is one thing, and knowing is another, and belief may or may not be justified.
His Excellency, the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, to come up on the stage to present a token of appreciation to Venerable Pratham Muni, including the commemorative prayer fan and satchel for the Supreme Patriarch's 96th birthday, as well as books and a floral garland. Your Excellency, please.